Yeah, what's the deal with that? Why do you have to have a license to get married in the first place, whether it's to another man or a woman or a cat or whatever?
Real quick, what isn't a battle in this day and age? You know, like
everything is a battle.
Almost nothing can be taken for granted.
Yeah, but if you're economically sound as an American, nothing's a battle because you can pay your lawyer to do it, or you can pay the cops to do it, or you can, whatever. Like, nobody wants to take responsibility for their own shit anymore.
You're right, but you're right and wrong in a certain regard. Yes, if you have money, you can always get control over those who don't have the same money. But unless you have all the money in the world, like someone like Bill Gates does, there's always someone who's going to have more money that you have to answer to. Now, the question is how many people that you know in government are that you can use to get the biggest bang for your dollar. And that's what it comes down to. That's where we've gotten to this point in our society where that it used to be that capitalism was a great thing because when capitalism is left to its own devices, it has a built-in control system. But since government has been trying to co-opt every single aspect of everything, there's been all these holes left, unanswered for, in which people are using to take control of the government. But the reason why I bring up the main battles is because if you look throughout our history and the history of most countries, these are the ones that are constantly being attacked. I mean, if you look at every right that we have, sure, there's going to be certain aspects that are constantly going to, be questioned and whatnot. But when it comes to guns, freedom of speech, marriage, and religion, that's really where you have like the biggest battles for every nation.
Well, but the good news is we did, for New Jersey at least, the Supreme Court has affirmed that gun ownership is a fundamental right. And
with the Chicago case, right?
There's something that happened in New Jersey.
Really?
Well, I wouldn't put marriage issues and certain other issues in the same par as gun control.
Yeah.
Because the right to bear arms is just definitely much more important than some of those social issues. Those are thrown in to distract you from more important things.
I might be the wrong guy to ask because I have a very pendulette theory with marriage, and that I think the government, I think it's illegal for the government to sanction any marriage, let alone straight marriage or gay marriage.
I think that's the real trick. Like they got people arguing about what's the definition of marriage, and they're not considering the fact that the government is so involved in this concept of marriage. They should butt out.
I've always, I get the concept of marriage prior to like the last 50 years, where if you had a bastard child, you were damning them to a life of poverty and ridicule. But everyone has a bastard child now. I mean, I found out that there's a good chance, even though my parents are married, that legality screwed me over and I might be a bastard. I just found this out last week. Oh well, it's not going to change my life. We don't live in a society where you get rocks hucked at you if it turns out that you had sex with a man out of wedlock. And you can set up a will or a trustee system to take care of your kids. And then now the law is set up in almost every modernized state in that if you live together for such and such amount of years, sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's even 15, they consider you to be married anyway. Right, and they just set it up so that if there is a breakup, it would go through marriage functions. Yeah. So really the only purpose for marriage is like a religious or ceremonial practice. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I don't really see the necessity in it. I think it's kind of an archaic practice. I had this argument with some people last night. But, if you want to, fine. Why do we need the government to tell you who you can and can't marry? Exactly. It doesn't really make a difference.
It's to protect our quality of life. Like, if I'm racist or if I'm homophobic and there's people next door who shouldn't be getting married by my book and they're getting married, that's decreasing my quality of life.
America.
I need my government to step up. Now, basically, I'm against any situation in which a government takes a secured liberty and converts it to a privilege and offers a license and a fee for it.
Sure. Actually, I was watching this video. There's this guy on YouTube named The Amazing Atheist, and while lately he's gone down the road of socialism, there was a point where I actually agreed with some of his arguments. And he was talking about how during the Obama campaign, which was just wrought with a lot of problems, but whatever, that's history now. It's a dark point in our American history. But if you look at his argument, he was actually one of those people who were saying that he was against gay marriage. He was against he was for civil unions for homosexuals, but he wasn't for the marriage aspect because he quotes that he was a Christian, and for some reason that's supposed to affect non-Christian belief. But I was laughing because the whole time I'm listening to this argument, it sounds tremendously like separate but equal.
Sure.
And given that he's an African-American politician, I found it extremely hypocritical that a man who's his ancestral background is one wrought with a bunch of people saying that, you can ride on the back of the bus and not the front, but there's certain water fountains that you're allowed to drink because your skin's toxic to, good fashioned white people. I love the fact that we've come so far, yet our first black president is spouting out propaganda, which sounds a lot like the separate but equal policy, but for gays.
And he's only half black anyway. He's not even
half black, half douchebag.
Like, we're all like, oh, we finally have our first black president.
Bill Clinton was our first black president.
Bill Clinton was indeed our first black president. But yeah, okay, marriage is supposed to be, as they say, marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman, and if one of the men want to be a woman, that's cool too.
Or if you live in Utah, it's a man and a woman and a woman and a woman and a woman.
Well, yeah, but with the license thing, they make it so it's a marriage between a man, a woman, and the state.
Yeah.
Because you have a third party involved who's part of the contract, and that's why shit gets so complicated when you have to go to break up, or if the kid has to choose one of the parents or the other.
Well, because it involves money. Commerce.
Because it involves money. Yeah.
There's this great comedian. There's this comedian named Doug Stanhope, and he's a famous libertarian comedian, which is why I'm promoting him. But he does this bit. He's like, you know what, baby? I love you so much. We gotta get the government involved. This shit's too good to not have the government rule over everything we do. That's how much I love you. I want bureaucracy involved, and that's kind of where it's at now.
I think he was on Alex Jones recently, actually.
He's a funny guy.
It says here, flying cars are real. How about that?
Yeah. The Amazing Atheist has really fallen a lot. And yeah, for those who can't see what we're doing, we're actually on YouTube trying to see what this guy's about. He was promoting himself to be a libertarian for a while, which is why I liked him, because I have to say libertarian 10 times a day, guys. But yeah, but now he's very, very socialist. I don't know what happened. He did a whole video about why capitalism doesn't work. And I'm like, yeah, you're a socialist now. Congratulations. Your card's in the mail.
Well, tyranny from a small group of elites doesn't work.
I like
any system adopted by them is not going to work.
I like Christian capitalism. You ever heard of that? Christian capitalism?
I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar.
No. It's like, okay, for one thing, forget about all the people you know who claim to be Christians and aren't. Because, like, if you go by the book, Christianity is a real tough thing to follow. Because you're supposed to be nice to others who have done wrong to you. You know, you're supposed to turn the other cheek all the time. Yeah, basically. But if you can go by the 10 Commandments and be a capitalist at the same time, wouldn't that be interesting? Like, trying to figure out how to make as much money you can, but being honest to people and not stealing, and yet honoring your mother and father and all that.
Right.
Like,
I've studied Christian.
No sense to me.
I've studied a great deal of theology and Christian theology, especially because that's my family background. And everything about Christianity goes against human nature, which is why it's such I mean, any sort of Abrahamic religion goes against human natural response to things, about being nice to people who have harmed you. I mean, turn the other cheek is the most alien concept to a man in any culture, let alone just on this planet.
Yeah, you're taught submission through religion, basically.
Yeah, and actually there's this part of Christianity many people don't know about, and that it says that any government, regardless of how oppressive, you should not fight back because that's against the way of God.
Exactly. That's the whole, and another big theme is the afterlife is where it's going to get good for you, because you're just supposed to you're meant to just suffer through this, basically, and don't question how shitty it gets or how oppressed you might be.
That's a good rule, favoring the people who are in control, who are the ones who told you what the rule was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems so simply tyrannical to me, but not to the sheep who's hypnotized by their Illuminati brainwashing.
Thomas Hobbes once said that regardless of the government, you should listen to it because any government's better than no government. But then again, he grew up during the English Civil War, so I mean, maybe his ideas are a little archaic.
Hey, necessity is the mother of invention. If we had no government, of course we would throw one together. You know, like, it's anarchy is such a great idea, but it will never last for more than a couple